Third John, and much like Second John, John is writing to somebody by name, or the last was elect lady, which we think really is a church. Here will be a little bit different. Gaius. It seems like there is a person he's writing to, but this particular Gaius would be someone in the church. More likely, one of these churches in Asia Minor, which would be West Turkey here today. Notice he calls himself the elder. He says, to the beloved Gaius, look how he loves his disciple, Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Which better way for a disciple to love somebody than loving them in truth? Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in good health. So he is praying for the physical health of Gaius as it goes well with your soul. So he wants him to have good health with the material part, right? And the spiritual. I'm not doing very good at erase this and if I can make this a little more legible. There we go. The spiritual. So these two elements, he says, I want you to have good health as it goes well with your soul. He cares about both. Both he cares about. Now what's interesting is he's saying your soul is really healthy, Gaius, and I wish that your physical health is to be as healthy as your spiritual health. Boy, couldn't we take a lesson from that? It seems like most people are so focused on their material health and not their spiritual health. So praise God for what God is doing in Gaius. He says, now, for I rejoice greatly when the brothers came and testified to your truth, as indeed you are walking in the truth. So, of course, he'd be walking in truth. Of course, someone whose soul was doing well would be walking in the truth. By the way, just to mention the word soul here, this is describing that spiritual part that, sometimes we put this in the immaterial, right, part of man. You'll see the word soul sometimes used interchangeably with spirit and mind, but just uniquely most of the time when the word soul is used in the Bible, it's in relation to the body, right? And sometimes you'll, it's the soul, like when the Bible says soul, it's thinking the body, the outer man, and it's thinking of that immaterial part, right? And the body together, and it's calling that soul, right? That all that part together, right? I should probably put soul right here, right? The body and the soul, but the soul in the immaterial part of the soul, its relation to the body. So sometimes when we're made of outer and inner, and if you wanted to say what's a good word to describe the outer and inner together working in relation to each other, relating to each other, word soul you'd use. If you were thinking what would be a good word to talk about the immaterial part of man, but not in coordination with the soul as much, you would use the word spirit, right? We have a spirit, and the spirit more operates, separate from the, when you say spirit, you're talking about that immaterial part of man, not related to the body, right? When you say the word soul, you're talking about that immaterial part of man that's related to the body. Both soul and spirit are describe the immaterial part of man, but yet spirit is really not in relation to the body, soul in relation to the body. Just a little bit of a thought there. Maybe that's a little bit overkill here, but just thought that'd be a little working theology. He says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in truth. Beloved, it is a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers, strangers as they are. So Gaius was doing something that was highly commendable, hospitality to some traveling brothers who were evangelist missionaries, spreading the word. They were strangers. Gaius has been welcoming them in. He more than likely is a man with some resources that he could be very hospitable in the church, who testified to your love before the church. So there were some traveling brothers that Gaius welcomed. These brothers report back to John, and they report back that how faithful Gaius was there, and they testified about the love that Gaius has for the church. Gaius loves this church. He loves the people of this church. And so, what an amazing thing. You will do well to send them on their journey in a manner worthy of God. And so this is something that Gaius has been doing. Now, he also could be referring to here. Some would say he could also be referring to, in a minute, he's going to talk about some that are going to be coming and how to treat them. Some traveling Christians, evangelists, missionaries, pastors, teachers, spreading the gospel word. So he says, I want you to send them on their way. So he says in verse 7, when I say send them on their way, it means like be hospitable, give them resources, provide for them, for they can go to the next mission. He says, for they have gone out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. These traveling missionaries and evangelists, they don't receive anything from the Gentiles because, missionaries, they don't need the money of pagans, right? That's not, the pagan Gentiles. That's not where they need to get their money. They get them from God's people, right? God's people are that support missionaries, right? God's people are the ones that do that with our dollars. So he says, there's some people coming, Gaius. I want you to be hospitable to them, just like you have before, just how you've received them, just how we receive testimony. And these are ones who go for the sake of the name, for the name of Jesus. And they don't have anything. They don't have a lot of reserve. They're coming from the Gentiles, and they don't receive money from pagans. So they have to depend on God's people for all of their resources. Therefore, we ought to support people like these, right? And what a great encouragement for us. We ought to support people, missionaries, people who've given their life to spread the gospel. That's a good thing. What a great question to ask. Do we support missionaries? At our church, people give, and all the money goes into our general, and a certain percentage comes out, and that goes to our missionaries. But then also, a good majority of our people, they support missionaries just on their own. And they're just giving money on their own to missionaries as well. This kind of ought to support. So it's a both and. He says, therefore, we ought to support people like these, that we may have fellow workers for the truth. But there seemed to be somebody who did not like these traveling pastors, preachers, evangelists, and would not, in that church with Gaius, that would not allow hospitality to be done. It was causing quite a dissension, and it was all because of his pride. I'm not really sure all the reasons why, but Paul lists a couple of them. He says, I've written something to the church. So Paul writes something to this church in more than likely Asia Minor, this church that Gaius is a part of. He says, I've written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. So Paul writes something, Diotrephes in the church, who occupies obviously a power of position or of leadership. He does not acknowledge the authority of the apostle, right? Which is a no-no, right? The authority of the apostle John. So John says, so if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us, wicked nonsense. So Paul wrote something to the church. Diotrephes said, no, not going to read it. And then instead, Diotrephes talks about this nonsense against the apostle John. And not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. So what he has been commending Gaius for, saying, Gaius, you've done so good to welcome the brothers, but this is not what Diotrephes is doing. And also, Diotrephes, he stops those who want to and puts them out of the church. Get that. This abuse of church discipline is taking place, right? This is terrible. Churches must do redemptive church discipline, right? But they must not abuse that and do it wrongly. And they must not use this as a power play. And that's what Diotrephes was doing. He was using church discipline in a way that anybody who wanted to be hospitable, he'd put them out of the church. This is evil and wrong. And especially when you're a leader in a church, like Diotrephes, more than likely he held some kind of pastoral position in the church. He was using his position to promote himself, and then anybody that gets in his way like a tyrant, he stomps down on them. And so if you've been in church ministry long enough, more than likely you've seen someone who acts like this, or you come across this. This is one of the saddest things. This is really sad when you have a man who is in ministry and he loves himself so much. He loves his authority. He'll talk bad about people to keep his authority. He won't be hospitable, and he'll do an abusive kind of church discipline, get people disciplined and out of the church because they do not agree with him 100%, or do not want to hold, they want to hold him accountable, and he doesn't like it. And so that's this Diotrephes, and people sometimes go, well, hey, let's make sure that Christianity always stays private. Well, it actually can't always stay private. So Diotrephes is a part of this church. He's in leadership, and Paul's calling out his name. Do we see that? He's calling out his name. He's saying, Diotrephes, we have all the witness testimony of what he's doing. He's calling him out, right? And as Diotrephes has been dealing falsely and doing rogue, abusive church discipline, Paul will come and do discipline himself on Diotrephes. He says, beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil has not seen God. Of course, what's he talking about? Well, he's, beloved, do not imitate evil, but good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil is not seen God. I think you can make a case that Paul immediately, when he says that, he's referring to Diotrephes on that, right? And beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. Whoever does good is from God. Actually, let me change my color here. Whoever does good is from God. More than likely, he's using this to talk about Gaius, right? So John's got another guy he's going to send, Demetrius. He says, Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. We also add our testimony, and you know that our testimony is true. So John, and I think I might have used the word Paul instead of John earlier. Feel like I did. But John is going to send this Demetrius. He's out giving testimony, talking about the good news, doing the work of evangelist, probably church planting. Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone. So everywhere Demetrius has been sent, they have good testimony, good letters. They love the work that Demetrius is doing. He's come their way. And John says, let me add our testimony, the good testimony from everyone else. And you know that our testimony is true. It's the principle of Deuteronomy 19, right? Should be 15, about having the 2 to 3 witnesses, right? He's saying, let me just give you the witnesses. This is, that this guy that's coming, Demetrius, you can trust him. Let him speak to the people. Let him do good ministry. Be hospitable to him. Help him. Don't let, don't let Diotrephes, stop Demetrius when he comes, right? Gaius, we need your help on this. Be hospitable to him, Gaius, just like you have been known to do. And so he says, I have much to write to you. He says, I got a lot more I want to write to you, but I'd rather not write with ink and pen. So he says, no more pages. And I understand what it's like this. Have you ever just been emailing people and texting people back and forth, and you're kind of like, hey, I would not rather write another email or text. Can we just talk in person, right? We can get this done. Let's talk. Let's handle life the way we're going to handle in eternity in heaven. So he says, I hope to see you soon, and then we will talk face to face. This is the way God has intended mankind to carry on relationship in life. Talk face to face, right? Nothing wrong with writing with ink and pen. Nothing wrong with an email or text or social media. Nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, glory in heaven and humanity and humanness is face to face. He says, peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, every one of them. As we close this off, I just want you to notice how much Paul talks about friends and all the ministry that Paul did, right? He always had friends. He had people that was with him, that was encouraging him. He was always had people around them. And so, by the way, I think I said the name Paul again. It's John. I guess it just kind of sticks in your head. This is clearly John. I think I just caught myself saying that again. But John, well, Paul does have people around him constantly, so don't get that wrong. But John is the same way. Peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, every one of them. Of course, this would be successful ministry for anybody. I've noticed this, that those who seem to be the ones who, I guess you could say, that last the longest, right? The ones who seem to be the healthiest, spiritually, right, are those who have friends. Those who have friends, right? It really seems that John, yes, Apostle Paul, but really, this book's about John. This is John, and this is the last of just the epistle John. There'll be a revelation later in the reading, but John lasts the longest of all the apostles. And I will tell you, this man obviously was healthy physically, but also this man was healthy spiritually. And this is not a new thing. This is the disciple whom Jesus loved. This is a man who was healthy spiritually, it would seem, in our gospel accounts and most others. And here's a man who part of this is there's friends, who says, the friends greet you. Greet the friends, every one of them. So he's encouraging them. You need to greet the friends that come, greet. The friends greet you. Greet the friends. So make friendships and be hospitable when they come. And so I've just noticed people in ministry or people who live the Christian life, it seems like they're friendly people and they greet and they're greeters and they love people. And these are people that seem to be really healthy spiritually. Okay, well, you have to pardon sometimes when I slip in Paul's name. It's kind of hard when so many epistles are his. I think I realized it a couple times here, just kind of going through here. And so, but this is the last of John's writing, and I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you next time for week 5 as we start the next book.